Toronto, namely Lenny Rothschild, Shaul Anisfeld, and Benzi Friedman got together and said we need to do something in Toronto to make sure that this is a city that has the infrastructure to help take care of all the children. And it's extremely, what a chashuvah things, how many stories am I hearing, how many feedback, how many people that, it's been reawakened. I'm here, I see a couple of mentors that were mentors way back. He says, wow, I'm so glad it started again. There were so many success stories that I could share with you. And it's a grace yeshikoyach to them that we have this organization, and it's helping. And I've seen in the 1 year that I've been involved, many stories where kids have been helped and started turning around, and it's their entire lives. Small little moments, small little part of their lives changed the future. And it's a tremendous yeshikoyach. But that's one is the board. Two is you, people who came in the last minute, decided to come. Really very much appreciated. Aishel Reyu Chazak. It's mechazik all of us. But what really is special is that Rabbi Greenspoon came to speak to us, to take time out of his busy schedule. He came in for a very short time, and that's why it was such a last-minute thing. Rabbi Greenspoon is really someone that the whole organization gets advice from and direction, together with Yishai Guri, who run the Nesivos in Lakewood. They ran the kollel for about 30 years, the kollel, which was a place which basically was set up for mentoring people. And from there, it morphed and metamorphosized into serious clinical health and an intake for helping thousands of families in Lakewood. I would say 2,000 is what I heard last, that recently were just helped through the auspices and the guidance of Rabbi Greenspoon. So it's a real honor and privilege that we have him here to share with us a few words, and hopefully we can all gain from it. Thank you very much.
Just put it on somewhere. I'm going to ask if you don't mind, if you can kind of move up a little bit, because my voice doesn't project. You don't have to be shy. There's plenty of space up here. Just in case. Thank you. I want to thank Bianco. I want to thank Lenny Rothschild, Shaul Anisfeld for giving me the schos to be able to speak to the Choshev Olam. And it's very encouraging to see so many people come out late at night on such short notice. And I feel very, very fortunate working in the helping field to have met so many wonderful people that just want to be there for other people, give up their own time, give up their koiches, give up their nights. I feel like I live in a very, very special place, surrounded by like extremely, extremely special people. This is not working with youth today is not a very. You don't see immediate results. You don't get shishi and shul for it. You don't get a lot of recognition and thank yous, both from the youth you're working with and even from the families that you're working with, a lot of times they will express appreciation for it, but because in general you're working with kids that are somewhat struggling, they don't necessarily see the results that they want to see so fast, and you might get some negative feedback along the way. And it takes a tremendous amount of strength, takes a tremendous amount of just being there for real in order to be able to do this work, to be able to continue to work in a place that it's really, you have to be L'Shem Shemayim in order if you want to see success. I want to speak today a little bit about the difference, because I'm finding this is really what youth are struggling with today. The difference between kind of outside performance and what it means to have internal success, being internally okay. In this week's parasha, we have the whole story of Korach. And Korach was a gadol. I don't even know how we can begin to understand the parasha. But what it does say is that Korach, there was a certain amount of kavod that was affecting his reasoning. There's a lesson that we could take from it. There was a certain amount of recognition that he wanted, that he was looking for. There was a certain, people are looking that they should be noticed, that the light should shine on them. Moshe Rabbeinu was the opposite. Moshe Rabbeinu was Anav Mikol Adam. Moshe Rabbeinu sought nothing from anybody else. And if you don't mind, I want to just start with this. I've been asking this to many people recently. When we're working with kids are struggling. Kids are struggling, they need extra chizuk, they're not reaching their maximum potential. There's a reason why they're asking other people to get involved. They're not so happy. They're not being so productive. They're not being who they could be. And we're trying to bring out their better qualities. And people will say, find something unique about them. Find a place that they shine. Everybody has something unique. Everybody has something that's special about them. Everybody has their personality. We say K'moshe in Partzefein Shavos, Kachin De'esein Shavos. Everybody has a chelik in the Torah. Find a place where they can shine, where they can be recognized. They can be special. And unfortunately, this is a very, very big mistake. It's a very big mistake. And I'm not saying we shouldn't recognize them and we shouldn't make them feel special. But if we're trying to prop somebody up who's struggling by trying to make them feel that they're better than somebody else, we're continuing a problem that they already have. They're comparing themselves to others. This is a Western influence that has come into our culture. There's no makar in Chazal that anybody needs to be the best at anything. There's no makar for it. We don't value people because they're better than Yedim. That's where Kinat Taivid and Kavod come from. It's Mitzian Es Adam and Oilom. We learn in Chazal, Ezu Asher Sameach B'chalkoi. Somebody who's happy with what they have. It's a Western influence. The outside world, what's the image of success? Being famous. Being a superstar. Having a tremendous amount of following. Today in the modern age of technology, it's all about how many followers you have. If you can be a star, if you can be somebody that has fame, this is what success is. And it's not a Yiddish musik. And it's not how people really feel good. I think everybody knows this, that the highest rates of depression in the country are in Hollywood. These are the people that have all that. They have the success, they have the fame, they have all the money. It doesn't make a person happy. So what makes a person happy? So I'm going to ask everybody, just for 2 minutes, if you can close your eyes, just literally for a minute. Close your eyes for a minute. It's okay. You're allowed to close your eyes once. Nobody's going to judge you for it. And if they do, who cares? Think back to the last time that you felt really happy inside. You felt really good about yourself. It could be something that was recently, and it could be something from years ago. Makes no difference. Think back to the time that you felt really good. And as soon as you have it, open your eyes. Okay, I'll take just a few volunteers. Anybody want to say what it was? I saw a lot of people close their eyes and open them. Somebody want to volunteer? Go ahead. A student to Hashem and Torah mitzvahs. Wow, yeah, that's a tremendous chus. Okay, beautiful. Great. Anybody else?
When I finished a full day of what I was supposed to be doing.
You finished a full day. You felt accomplished that day. Okay, good. Excellent. Anybody else? Nobody else brave enough? Go ahead. Learning with a younger boy. Okay. Connected with people in your family. Beautiful. So notice that nobody said a word about anybody else. I'm doing this all over the place. Nobody said one word about recognition from somebody else. We don't feel good about ourselves when we get recognized by others. That's not how we feel good. We feel good when we spend time with the family. We feel good when we're matzliach in what we're doing. We got somebody to be shomer Torah mitzvahs. We feel good when we learned with the Talmud. We feel good when we had a good day. We have to think about this, because if you're working with youth and they're lacking in happiness, this is what you want to do. How do you give them that experience? Where in their life do they have the opportunity to have that experience? I was telling this to Yankel. One thing that I found troubling doing this exercise, and I've probably done it by now, gotten results from over 100 people, is that I'm finding a minimal amount of people saying things that are about Yiddishkeit. People are talking about how they've spent time with their family, or an accomplishment that they had, or when they felt like that they were being productive, or they felt like, all sorts of different things where they felt personally good about themselves. And I'm not hearing enough. We're talking about adults in our community. Baruch Hashem, we had a good number of answers here tonight that were connected to Yiddishkeit. But you would think that growing up as a Frum Yid and affects every part and parcel of our life, that would be kind of like a primary thing, that what we would say. I had a good davening. I had a good seder. Right? I did good shmiras Torah mitzvahs. Or that I accomplished my Yiddishkeit, I was able to give it over. Right? Those are good examples. But we're not having enough of this. And therefore, I want to point this out. If we're working as Frum Yidden with youth in our community, and we want them to feel good, we want the focus also for them to feel good about their Yiddishkeit. We don't want them to just feel good because they had a good game of basketball. We don't want them to just feel good because, they got up in the morning. They went to school that day. These are nice things to feel good about, but we want them to feel good, that they can feel proud. We want to be able to have a focus on this, how this is connected with their Yiddishkeit. This is what's real. This is what we're trying to give over. Moshe Rabbeinu was the biggest son of in Klal Yisrael. It had nothing to do with anybody else. So, I don't claim to be the biggest maven in the world. I'm humbled for being here in front of seasoned mechanchim and people that probably can give me a lot of advice in life. But I work with a lot of youth. and I see a lot of things I'm seeing the progression of things. And, when you're working with kids that aren't like, it's not the regular chinuch that we're just trying to give over, you notice things that are happening. I don't want to beat a dead horse. I don't want to talk about technology as far as like what the dangers of technologies are. I think everybody's very well aware of that. We had a CFIS, and there's tag organizations, and I think everybody's aware that there's pitfalls in technology, and these are things that we need to be aware of, and we need to have the right shmiras on, and we have to, the kids, we don't want to introduce all sorts of outside influences into their lives. At the same time, we have to recognize that they are growing up in a world of technology. And it's a very different world than the world that I grew up in. Some of the people here are a little younger, so they can relate to it a little bit better. But it was a different world when you didn't have access to all the information that adults have. And the youth today, whether or not they personally have their own technology in their house, or if they never had any technology in their house, they're growing up in an age of technology, which means that all the information that exists to the whole world is at the tip of people's fingertips, and that by default, kids have access to this information. I never knew what an adult salary was when I was a kid. Kids today do. I never knew the cost of houses. Kids today do. I never knew news outside of whatever my parents chose to share with me. Kids today know exactly what's going on in the world out there. They have an overabundance information, and it's a lot for a young brain to be able to deal with. And it's caused a lot of challenges. It's caused a lot of challenges with youth. When you have a child who's exposed, I think everybody knows this, right? We're talking about technology. If we have a child who's exposed to adult material, they'll get traumatized. Right? If a child finds out before they're of an age to be able to process things that are in Yoni Kedusha, they'll get traumatized. They won't know how to absorb this information. So even if it's not traumatizing, but if we're exposing kids to information that's really adult information, kids at a young age, right? What do they know about October 7th? So when I was growing up, I would know exactly what my parents told me. I would know maybe what the school chose to share with me. Today they know a lot more. And their world becomes, they have a young brain who is trying to process adult information. And the result of that is that we have young kids that are acting, thinking, behaving like adults before they're old enough to do that. So, yeah, Yankel was talking about me. I don't like when people talk about me, but I'm the director of Nesivos in Lakewood, where it's just like we meet with families who have struggling kids, and we set up a game plan for them, and we're involved in finding them the right therapies, and we have a big mentoring program. We do support groups for parents. We find them schools, jobs, summer camps, yeshivas in Eretz Yisrael. Baruch Hashem, it's very busy, very, very busy. But when we started 12 years ago, the average age of kids that were dropping out of the school system was 17 years old. Now it's 12. And we've seen progressively, year after year, the age go down. Pre-teens today are acting like teens acted and thinking and behaving 5 years ago. Somebody just told me this today. My 12-year-old decided I'm wearing a different color socks. He says, I'm 12, I can do whatever I want. We would never hear a 12-year-old say that 5 years ago. I shouldn't say never because there's always an exception, but that's kind of the normal now. It's the new norm. And it's much harder to work with because they don't have the maturity. You can't talk to them like adults. They don't have the maturity. It's a big challenge. You have little kids who are refusing to go to school. What are you going to do about it? So it used to be, you take a little kid and you put him in the car and drive him to school. And now, like, I'm not getting in the car. And if you force them into the car, I've had many stories like this. They'll just jump out at a red light. So I know this is out of town and things happen a little bit slower out of town. But this is like, I go around, this is happening all over the place. The same issues that exist in Lakewood and in Brooklyn, I'm sure they exist in Toronto and they exist in all other places. The preteens today are what the regular teens were a few years ago. And in a few years from now, Mr. Shem, you're going to have other asifas, you're going to talk about the issues that are coming up. It's scary to think about, but like 12-year-olds are the ones that are acting like the teenagers today. It's scary to think about what a 10-year-old who's acting like a teenager is going to be like. Another result of this is them having access to adult information is that we have a tremendous increase in chutzpah. Tremendous increase in chutzpah. So they used to have a diagnosis, it was called ODD, or oppositional defiant disorder. I haven't found clinically that there are so many people that have ODD, like that they lack the ability to understand what a position of authority is. It's like a cognitive kind of social learning disorder, that you don't understand the difference between a peer and a person of authority. Like, you just don't get it. And there are some kids that are like this, and they struggle in life, and it's the same type of people that struggle with their bosses when they get a little older if they didn't figure it out. And, the same ones who talk back to the Rav when the Rav tries to tell them something kindly, they don't understand the difference between a Rav and a peer. I haven't found that that's so common. We have a lot of kids with a tremendous amount of chutzpah. We have a lot of kids that their Rebbeim tell them something or their parents tell them something and they say no. If you're fed adult information, your brain it's not young enough to really comprehend about like why they're entitled to an opinion, you're not entitled to an opinion. It's going to look like ODD. Your parent tells you to go to school. I don't like school. You're supposed to come down to the Shabbos Suda, and why should I come down to the Shabbos Suda? You're talking about an underdeveloped brain that has all the access to all the information that you have. I was in one of the supermarkets, and a mother was trying to tell a kid something, and I heard the kid say to the mother, you think you're smarter than Google? It's a ma'aseh shahaya. Normal adolescent development, it's normal when a kid reaches a stage of adolescence that they're trying to separate and become their own person, that they start finding themselves, they start having their own opinions. Right? They need to leave just being a child, just being a makabel, just being somebody that's accepting what people are telling them, to trying to find themselves. And that should be a gradual process of kind of learning more information, being able to absorb it, being able to know how to apply it, being able to be mature enough to be able to understand like what is it that you're supposed to be making decisions about on your own, what are things that you need to ask, what are the things that you're ready for, what are the things that you're not. I don't really know how kids do it smoothly today. I don't really know. The chiddush to me is when a kid could go through the system without any hiccups, that's a chiddush to me. I don't know how that is happening. With everything that's going on in the world, with all the distraction, with all the yetzer haros, with all the information that they have, and they could just kind of go through this process where I can start becoming my own person, start developing ability to think about like what's right for me and what are my morals and what are my standards, and who do I want to be, and what's my future, and what do I care about, and like what type of person I am now, and to be able to do this in a smooth process without like making decisions that they're not ready for or that are irresponsible because they're not really old enough to do it, to not come to conclusions that are off, to me is a big chiddush. It's a ness. And I think we have a lot of siyata d'shmaya today. The fact that we can raise most of our kids, we can raise them. I think the school system generally is okay. Like, not everybody is like going crazy and going off the derech and needing to end up in rehabs. That's not the case. Baruch Hashem. Baruch Hashem, we have talented rabbeim and talented moros, and we have parents that are doing a great job, and it's working for most of the kids. But it doesn't surprise me when there are kids that that process doesn't work so smooth. When you have, if we're just like, we need to be able to understand this, that if you have everything provided to a child from a young age, they have all access to adult information, they're being told from the outside world, and this stuff seeps into our community. You should make your own decisions. You have a right to make your own decisions. It's very confusing for them. It's very, very confusing. So I asked for that exercise in the beginning. I know that I don't have so much time to speak, and I mean, we could probably talk a whole night about working with kids, and I don't really know like what the most important thing to hear is. But I think this is a very, very important piece. When I ask for that exercise, do people think about what true happiness is? How a person really feels good about themselves? How a person really internally feels good? What would real self-esteem look like? This is something that has become more and more important today. It used to be, and I'm going even a generation back, it used to be that I think if we ask anybody 65 plus, if we ask, you go over to them and you ask them like, how was your day today? They'll probably say, great, it was very good. Do you feel accomplished? You'll get a blank stare. Are you happy with your life? Do you have good self-esteem? Do you have love in your life? I mean, I know if I ask that to my parents, they'll ask me, did you drink anything today? It wasn't how people thought. This wasn't their day-to-day thinking system. They had a set of values about what was important. I need to get up in the morning. I need to do my responsibilities, right? I need to go to work. I need to be able to come home. I need to provide for my family. I need to do homework with my kids. I need to do my chores. I have to make minyan. I need to go to sleep on time, and I need to do the same thing the next day. Slowly, there's a shift in how people are thinking about what's important for them in life. And today, not even the youth, but even like people that are up till their mid-30s, the most important things for them in life are not about did you get up in the morning and did you go to work and did you provide for your family, or did you learn a whole day and did you do your homework with your kids and did you get up the next morning. That's not their set of preferences. Their set of preferences is like, do I feel good about myself? Do I feel accomplished? Do I feel like I'm a good person? Am I happy? Do I feel connected? And this has become more and more of a value from a younger and younger age. Kids need to feel good about themselves in order to be able not just to thrive, in order to be able to get by. One thing that I don't have I just want to make this disclaimer. I have no tinus on the chinuch system, and I don't mean to talk any negativity. But one thing we weren't prepared for, and I think it was because nobody knew it was coming. I think we all thought, how are we going to raise a healthy family? You run a house that has the right hashkafas, you do the right things in your house, you have a set of expectations, you follow through with what you're doing, you're consistent, you provide enough attention to your kids, you provide for them for their physical needs, for their emotional needs, you're a good example, lead by example. I must have heard that schmooze from different people over the years a million times. Lead by example. You can't expect your kids to be better than you. You're a bar chesed, your kids will be bar chesedim. You're somebody that has patience, you're teaching your kids to be patient. You're somebody who has yer shemayim, your kids are going to be yer shemayim. Nobody mentioned the word about mental health. And today you can be the best parent in the world. And I know the best parents in the world that have struggling kids. There are kids that have anxieties. There are kids that have low self-esteem. They have all sorts of issues that prevent them from being successful in school. They have social skills issues. They have learning disabilities. They have ADHD. They're impulsive. They talk back. I just got off the phone with a parent. His child is kicked out of school because he was chutzpahdik to the Rebbe. And he refused to back down. Gets stuck. The child gets stuck. What's the kid always like? Is he a kid that's just a bad kid? He's a rotten kid? No, he's the sweetest kid. Last year he didn't have any problems in school, but there was a personality clash. Is this a bad kid or is this a kid that's having issues? We live in a world today where the primary issue that people are dealing with are mental health related issues. And I can't say why. I don't know why. I leave it to all the chacham in this world to say why. We have a sensitive generation, we have a reactive generation, we have a spoiled generation. I don't know, you can say all the explanations in the world, but this is the metzias. And it's going on all over the place. Young kids, little kids, 5-year-olds. And it affects them to the point, their mental health affects them to the point that they can't function. Parents didn't do anything wrong necessarily. I don't see a correlation between, it's like, okay, I live in Lakewood, right? There's 40,000 kids in Lakewood. So who are the kids that end up in my office? The kids that are struggling. You would think that it's all the families that have issues. They're the ones who end up, they should be 90% of them, right? They're not 90% of them. They're the same ratio as the regular kids as the rest of society. There's 9 out of 10 healthy families. 9 out of 10 of the kids that come into my office are from good families. Are the parents perfect? No, nobody's parents are perfect. Do they need to learn something different? Yeah, we could always teach how to be better parents, how to be more tuned in. We have a plague going on of mental health issues, and we haven't been prepared for it. It's not part of a chinuch system. Nobody told us when we got married, how do you deal with a child who has an anxiety disorder? How do you deal with a child who has low self-esteem? How do you deal with a child who's can't figure out how to be motivated? So we used to call them lazy. I don't find that so many kids are lazy. I think they all want to do well. They don't know how. If you gave them the opportunity, they would do it. This piece about how to feel internally happy, internally accomplished, is a piece that has become a number one priority. I tell all the people walking into my office today, it used to be the biggest expense of raising a nice-sized Jewish family was tuition. It's not anymore. It's all the extra help that they need. They need extra tutoring, they need extra mentoring, they need therapies, they need medication. That's the biggest expense today in raising a nice-sized Jewish family. And if there's a family that doesn't have any of those things, Hashem save them from challenges that we face today. What's my cutoff time, Yanko? Is everybody out at 10 o'clock? It's it's going to turn into a ghost town? Huh? 11 o'clock? Huh? I can go as long as we want. I just.
I say good question after 11.
I can stay after 11.
Good question after 11.
There's another piece that I want to bring out because it's very, very important in understanding kids today. And we're in a shul, so I'm going to try to be sensitive about it. But this is something that has come down, is crystallized more. There's an expression in Yiddish for us, kristaltzach yiddeltzach. It's expression in Yiddish. I never really understood it until I started seeing it. The stuff that happened by the goyim. We didn't start struggling with substance abuse in the community until, 20 years ago it became a real problem. And the outside community, they were struggling with it for a lot of time before that. And the issue that I want to talk about today didn't really come into the community so pronounced as it is today until really a few years ago. And I saw it explode during COVID. And if we're not out of town and you're a little bit behind the times, then good for you. But it's like this is something that we need to be aware of. This is happening more and more. We live in a very, very, very hypersexualized world. We're bombarded all the time from pictures in the streets. Anytime you turn on the radio, anytime you go into a public place, whenever you take your kids on vacation, if you fly on a plane, it's like it's in your face all the time. Anyone who has any exposure to technology, this is what sells. This is what's popular. And even the kids that don't have any exposure to technology, because it became a norm by everywhere, this is something that they have exposure to. They have exposure to it in the schoolyard. They have exposure to it when they go over to their friends' houses. They have exposure to it in camp. They have exposure to it anytime there's a class trip. This is like we don't have that much control of monitoring them 24 hours a day. And if we tried to monitor them 24 hours a day, we'd have a separate issue. I don't recommend people trying to monitor their kids 24 hours a day. To allow them to be kids also. It used to be easier for me to do this when I didn't have so much gray in my beard because people didn't look at me like he's from the last generation. But when I was growing up, when I was a youngster, I didn't think, the things that made me feel normal, or the things that I thought about as far as as far as myself, my identity. We thought about what was popular, what was fun, what was acceptable, what was responsible, what was the right thing to do, based on looking around at our friends. And that's kind of like how we defined ourselves, by seeing what's kind of normal, what's kind of the expectation. And that was as far as it went. Who am I? I'm a yeshiva bacher. I live in this town, and I act like a teenager, and I want to do what teenagers do. So I wanted to drive a car when I was 17 years old, and I wanted to have a little bit more independence. And I didn't have a focus about what I was attracted to. Was there Yetzer Haras back then? Of course there was Yetzer Haras back then. But that's all it was. It was the Yetzer Hara. Because there's such a proliferation of exposure to sexuality, people are thinking, kids, from the time they're very young, when they're very underdeveloped, and for sure when they're teenagers, about who am I, what is my attraction. And anyone who's a little bit confused about this, it starts wrecking their lives. If they think that they might be attracted to the same gender, or if they think that they're not comfortable with themselves, their own identity, if they have anything that doesn't feel normal, or even if the fact that I'm thinking about myself in such a way that I have all these attractions, the amount of guilt and shame, the amount of disconnect, the amount of confusion that they have, it takes up a huge part of their brain. And I can't tell you how often, it used to be like a couple of years ago, this was a primary issue by the boys, and now it's just as common by the girls. Like it came in by a storm by the girls. I don't know, all of a sudden one day it was like the shefa opened up and now they have the same issues. It's a big issue. Most parents are not talking to their kids about this stuff. Most Rabbeim are not talking about to their students, and Moras are not talking to their students about this stuff. If we can understand that this can be part of their issue, this is something that we can tune into being able to make them feel comfortable. And we don't have to. Doesn't mean they have to become their therapist. It doesn't mean that you're the person who has to resolve this issue for them. But when someone doesn't feel different, someone doesn't feel like that there's something wrong with them by struggling with these things, that's half the solution. When kids start not being successful, there's a very fast progression, and I'm going to just try to go through this a little fast because I know I'm out of time. There's a very, very fast and predictable progression about how they start getting more and more disconnected. And I'm going to talk about the outside progression of it. For many kids, it happens on the inside. And when I say it happens on the inside, you have a lot of kids today that are just shutting down. They're not rebelling on the outside, but they're shutting down. They're staying in their room. They're going into depression. They're not participating. They become more withdrawn within themselves. There's a lot of kids that are doing this. And then there's also a lot of kids who on the outside, they're still able to act normal, but it doesn't feel normal to them. And their issues are only coming out later, and that's not a better outcome, it's a worse outcome. When issues only surface, like you have a girl who goes through the Beis Yaakov system, and they send her to Eretz Yisrael, and all of a sudden her issues come out in Eretz Yisrael, and then they come back home. We don't have a system anymore to work them with. There's no safety net anymore. We can't send them back to a yeshiva anymore. When people are, we got them, a lot of people are just like, let's push them through, let's get them to the next step. Let's get them to graduate school. Let's get them, to go on to the next step in life. And I think as mentors, we get a lot of pressure for that. How do I get my kid up in the morning? How do I get my kid to be able to participate a little bit more? How do I get them to socialize? How do I get them to be a little bit more active? And a lot of times we can do that. But if we're not taking care of the issue on the inside that we talked about, they're going to continue to suffer inside. So there's this progression where if they're not feeling internally happy, if they're not feeling proud, if they're not feeling like this really works for them, if they're not feeling like this is something that I can go to sleep at night and I can feel really, really happy with myself. Again, like if we're talking like you're talking to some people outside and you're going to say somebody from Lakewood came and talked about you, over a certain age they're going to be like, he's just crazy. But this is the way the kids are today. If they don't feel good about themselves, they start feeling disconnected from what they're experiencing. And that'll usually look like in the beginning like a disconnect from their academics. They're not so motivated to learn, or they're kind of doing it yotzet zayin. It's not something that's really meaningful to them. You'll see them kind of lose cheshek or lose their drive or their simcha in it. And after a while, if a child is doing this for a while and they still it doesn't improve, they'll start feeling more disconnected. Like if this is not my future, if this is not the place about how I'm going to be successful, this is not about how I feel good about myself, so then I don't really belong to this. And they'll start dissociating a little bit from the kids. That's what they want to do. They'll start feeling disconnected from that, from just like the good kids who just they feel happy by doing what they're supposed to do and by being accomplished, by feeling really good about themselves, and they got a good test score. And they start associating with more kids who are more on the fringe, other kids who are disconnected. So it goes from kind of disconnection from their school system to disconnection from a certain peer group. And if that happens for a while, eventually they will be like, I can't really relate to what everybody else what's popular to do. And they start feeling disconnected. Like you go to shul and it kind of like you sit in shul and it's like, what am I doing here? If I'm not the person that really feels that this is my future, that this is what makes me happy, this is where I belong, and this is where I thrive, and this is where I feel good about myself, so what am I going to shul for? And unfortunately, we have, I don't know the way it is here, but I see a lot of kids kind of drifting out of school and out of shul. And I looked around my shul, and I daven in a shul which is not a pressurized place. I daven in a Heimish shul where they don't care what time you come to shul, and you could stand outside in the back and drink coffee the whole time, and nobody's going to tell you boo. And it's like, it's a fun place to be. And I'm seeing kids that are just stopping to come. And the parents are telling me I can't get my kid to come to shul for all the money in the world. And a lot of these kids have never fallen out of the school system. But they're not going to shul. What does that tell you about where a kid is holding, how they feel connected? And when it's more on the outside and they feel like shul's not their place and school's not their place and the good kids are not their place, so then like, okay, so let me find some other things that I can feel good. And they start looking for other things to feel good. And I got to say something which might sound a little shocking, but if you're a mentor, tell them, good for you. Don't give up. Keep looking. You're going to find it. I was in the the bagel shop over here today. And right next door to me, there was a girl who looked like she obviously wasn't dressed like a standard Beis Yaakov girl. And there was a young married lady sitting and talking. I'm sure she was probably one of your mentors. And this is exactly what we're looking for. She was sitting there looking, and they were having a fun experience where you could say, this girl, you could see, she was just like, someone was giving attention to her. Someone was seeing the goodness in her. Somebody was appreciating her. Somebody saw the chelik halikam mimal in her. It was light. It was fun. They went out to eat. I don't think they were talking about anything deep, anything important. And she felt good about herself. We're not talking about rocket science, about how to be able to make a child feel good. But it's very different from compliance. Very, very different from compliance. If you're mechabed somebody, if you give them attention, if you see them as being somebody who's valuable, if you talk to them and listen to them, you hear what they have to say, you're giving them a place where they can internally feel, somebody appreciates me, somebody sees me, I can feel comfortable right here. If you can go out and give that experience to one of the boys or girls that you're working with, where they come home and they go to sleep at night and they say, you know what, I went out today with somebody who saw the goodness in me. Somebody who made me feel really good inside. They can go to sleep and say, I want to get up the next day and I want to repeat that experience. And start, I'm out of time, but start an internal process of reconnecting. I recently spoke at a Kesher Nafshi event, which was they make Shabbatons for parents of kids who have struggles. They have hundreds and hundreds of people. It's larger than the Aguda convention. They do it multiple times a year. And I spoke about like the turning point of when kids who were off decided to come back. And I called a whole bunch of kids that now they're adults, people that I knew, and I asked them, what was the turning point? What was the turning point that you went from a place of self-defeating behaviors, self-sabotaging behaviors, giving up on yourself, not caring, living irresponsibly, to saying, I care, I'm going to be a somebody, I have what to look forward to in life, I'm going to put in the work. Like there was some turning point that it went from one to the next. You know, they went from people who weren't being successful, people who didn't have the energy to be able to. What was the turning point? And I got a lot of different answers, which was very interesting. But they all told me the same thing. When I decided to, I knew there was somebody to call. Every single one told me. What did I do about it? I picked up the phone and I called that person and I knew was there for me. Every single one said the same thing. Now, it still takes time. It's not like they call and they're like, okay, I'm going to put a hat and jacket on and go back to yeshiva tomorrow and learn 18 hours a day. It's going to take them time. And that was a common denominator between every single one. And I said to myself, if any of them didn't have that one person to call, they wanted to turn around. So I don't think we have to wait until they've, hit a point where they're down and out, and they're doing all sorts of crazy things, and they're, outside of the community. I think that if we're able to address this need, where kids could feel happy and proud, even if maybe it's not everything is doing so well in their life. If they had a place where I can feel good, I can feel proud, I can feel like I have what to wake up for tomorrow, I feel like I can go to sleep and feel comfortable with myself, we're going to be saving a lot of Yiddish neshamas. So, give some time for it.
The other one could eat at the same time, do it free, but just would like to ask a couple questions or have people ask questions.
Sure.
Aleph is, how do you make that connection between the ruchnius that you began, would be wonderful, where they feel connected to Torah Yiddish, things that are really meaningful, and at the same time, the point is make them feel good about themselves. How do you bridge the two?
I don't know if I'm the right person to answer that question. I think there's Sisa Machanchim who could probably do a better job than me. I think it's just a point of focus. I think a lot of times we're spending time with kids who aren't being matzliach, and we don't realize that that's such an important nakudo. I'll just say one piece about this. I know a lot of kids that went completely off. I haven't found one yet that is really happy being off. I haven't found one yet. When you wake up, when the first memories of a kid, the first experiences in their life, right? What are the first things that a child experiences? They wash Negelwasser in the morning, and they say Moidani, and we teach them Torah Tzivah. We go to sleep and we say Shema with them. These are it's ingrained so strong inside a child about this is the main thing in life. The first for a boy, the first real experience that they have is their upsharing, and they're taken to the cheder. It's so deeply ingrained in a person. Doing anything else is going to be silly for them. That's really what counts. There's a lot of distraction out there, and we get lost in the distraction. Trying to work with these kids, we get lost in it. We want to just give them a good time. We want to keep them busy. We want to we look at things on the outside. We pay attention to we want to pay attention to things that are real to them. And Yiddishkeit is real to us. We should pay a little bit more attention to it. So I don't have a magic trick to it, and I'm sure there's experienced mechanchim who can say how to make it more alive, but it's a point of paying attention to it. You're working with people, pay attention to it. Go ahead. Yeah. Correct.
So who said that's better?
I didn't say it's better. And this is one of the things that I was trying to bring out earlier. There are people that are holding it inside, they're not expressing it on the outside, and it comes out at a later age, and it's harder for us to work with it later. When they're younger, we have systems, we have all sorts of alternative schools, we have programs, we have mentorship things, and if it comes out later, it's much harder to deal with. If an adult decides, I've been miserable for so long, I've never felt connected to any of it, and I've just been doing it because I'm not a rebellious nature, we don't really have a system about how to work with those people. I don't know that that's any better. No, this is something that we need to pay a lot of attention to. The fact that they're not expressing it on the outside doesn't mean that they're not struggling on the inside. If you have a child who's not happy, even if they're doing everything that they should do, they need a mentor. They need extra services. They need somebody to help them feel good. They need somebody to help them connect. They need somebody to help them feel positive about their connections. Absolutely. Thank you. Go ahead. Something from the woman's side.
Tools or tips or guidance specific on how to connect with children in a way that they're not, when you talk about they were confused because there's an onslaught of inappropriate things going on and that confuses them. And you're saying that we need to connect with them so that they feel comfortable to not feeling badly about themselves. Can you give a little more?
So, I mean, one thing I'll say specifically about teenagers, and we're getting this younger and younger, like serious issues, like they need serious help. And it used to be like you can get kids help until they're like teenagers, and then like, I don't have any issues, my Rebbe's a jerk. That's kind of like what happens when they hit like 14 years old if they're really struggling. Or my parents are just out to lunch. Sending people for therapy in their teenage years doesn't really work so well. They don't have the maturity to walk into a therapist and say, I have a problem, I need to work on it. And they're not young enough to just do it because my parents want me to do it, so I'm going to comply and do it. The problem is that age is getting younger and younger. So I really don't recommend the teenagers and the pre-adolescents today to push them into therapy. And I think that if you do, you're going to push it down the road further. Mentorship is actually a much more powerful tool. We don't have to resolve all their issues. They might struggle with it, but we want them to feel normal. We want them to feel good. We don't want them to feel negative. We don't want them to feel like they're going to Gehenna. We don't want them to be walking around with shame. And if they have a place that they can talk and they can be open, then you can still look at them and treat them like they're a valuable human being. You've done most of the work. Most of the work. You don't have to have a degree for that. And if you built up such a relationship where they're now comfortable talking about these things, if you've gotten that far, then they're probably ready now to go for therapy. So that's kind of like where you, as a layperson, this is where you're working on. You're working on how to be able to make them comfortable with you. How can they feel connected to you? And by being connected to you, they're being connected to Yiddishkeit, they're being connected to society, they're being connected to themselves. Go ahead. Chutzpah, yeah.
Is it a problem that needs to be fixed, or it's something that you just deal with? Is there a mahalach nowadays to work out how to make kids respectful and respect authority, or are we just saying like we're not an authority?
So the question is chutzpah something that just is, or is this something that we work on fixing? Right? Is that the question? Okay. So in the old school, you used to hit the kids. Right? That's what they used to do. They hit the kids, or you put them in their place. And like other places will say, you throw them out of school until they learn to comply. And they have to know that the Rebbe is the Rebbe, the teacher is the teacher, the principal is the principal, who a parent is. There's a letter from Rav Dessler, and he wrote this right after the war. So we're going back 70 years ago, where he talks about people who raise kids. It was a question about if you should hit the kids. That was the question. And Rav Dessler was pro-hitting the kids. And he says those people will say that if you hit the kids, they're going to hit back. He says because they're not raising their kids as parents. They're raising them as peers. So if you hit them, they're going to hit you back. If you raise them as parents, then okay, then this is something that I deserve. Then I have to work on themselves. He says those people, those modern people that say that they're treating their children as peers and their kids are going to hit back, he says you're going to have a dor, this is his language, a dor of Hitleristim. That's his language. You're going to raise a dor of Hitleristim. So I don't know what Rav Dessler would be if he was around today, because this is the generation that we're in.
It means they hit a lot.
Huh?
That's what Hitleristim.
Yeah, except that it was in Hebrew. I don't know what Rav Dessler would, this is the generation that we have. The kids are not understanding that the parents are parents. From a young age, they're not understanding the parents are parents and the teachers are teachers. And we have to find a different way of teaching it to them. Like, the same way somebody has to know when they go to work, the boss is the boss and you have to, but it's not done from a dogmatic place where I'm going to show you and I'm going to force you, because it doesn't work for the kids today. So we talk with them and we talk to them about these are expectations, and there's expectations about wherever you are, and it's hard and it's difficult and you might not understand it, and if you're having a difficult time you might need extra accommodations, and you come and talk to me about it. It's a different way of talking to them, but it is a skill they have to learn. If they don't learn this, they're not going to be successful in life. So there's something that they have to learn, but it's a bigger challenge for us to do this, because they're not looking at us, okay, he said it, so I have to do it because I'm the kid and they're the adult, and therefore I have to just be mevatel my das. That doesn't work today. The kids are not going to go for that. You try to explain it to a kid, and they're going to be like, I'm not interested in talking to you again.
Thank you very much.
Yasher koach. Thank you, everyone. Really appreciate it. Thank you. I'm trying to record it. And no, I'm trying to record it myself. And I couldn't get my thing started, so you have to send it to me. Thank you.